In this video, we return to the topic of nutrition as it relates to the fundamental issue of energy balance. Previously, we discussed the fact that every food we eat has some energy value in calories of heat generated when we eat it. The energy, we learned, comes from combinations of four basic nutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and alcohol. Most foods provide energy to our bodies with predominantly one of these nutrients, but many foods contain more than one of them in variable amounts. We learned that to understand our energy balance and how to control our storage of energy as body fat, we have to make an effort to assess which nutrients are in what we are eating on a daily basis. Let's take a minute and do a brief exercise in which we look at four common foods and make an educated guess regarding which nutrients are in the foods. Let's start with a dish of spaghetti. Which nutrients would you say are present in this food? The truth is that spaghetti is almost totally made out of grain, and it therefore contains almost all carbohydrate with a tiny amount of protein. I hope you guessed correctly. Our next food is a piece of chicken. Which nutrient or nutrients do you think are present in the chicken? If you guessed mixtures of fat and protein, you'd be right on. Chicken and other meats typically do not contain any carbohydrates. Our next item is an apple. What nutrients are in the apple? If you guessed carbohydrates, you'd be correct again. An apple gives us almost pure carbohydrate with almost no protein and no fat. Our final item for today is a potato. What nutrient or nutrients are in the potato? If you guessed mostly carbohydrate, you'd be right again, because potatoes are a starchy vegetable that gives us energy almost totally coming from carbohydrates. The potato does generate a tiny amount of protein, but you and I would not eat potatoes to increase our dietary protein. Hopefully you did well on this brief exercise that looked at nutrient content of common foods. In our last video, we also discussed 7 major groupings of foods and which nutrients were predominantly in each of them. These included vegetables, fruits, meats and eggs, dairy products, grains, condiments, and liquid foods or drinks. We're going to expand on this concept by discussing the grams of various nutrients that are in these food groups and the calories per ounce of food that we can expect to influence our energy balance when we consume them. There are various methods for gaining this knowledge, but I personally find it easiest to learn the calories per ounce of a given food and then later to learn what a certain number of ounces of the food looks like on my plate. It turns out that everything we call food generates its own number of calories per weight of the food in ounces. We call this the food calorie scale, which ranges from 0 calories per ounce of pure water to 250 calories per ounce of pure oil. All foods fit into this scale. And as you'll learn, the vast majority of the foods fit on the bottom portion of the scale, that is, less than 25 calories per ounce. In fact, there are only a few things that we can buy that generate more than 100 calories per ounce. As you can see, only coconut, butter, nuts, and cooking oil generate more than 100 calories per ounce. And in fact, only a few foods provide more than 50 calories per ounce. It seems obvious, therefore, that we who are struggling with fat storage would simply avoid foods that generate a lot of calories per ounce and everything would go well for us. Unfortunately, the big problem is not the calories per ounce that we eat, but rather the number of ounces. Let's go back to each of our food groups identified on our last video and begin to see where representative examples fit on our calories per ounce food scale. We'll start with fruits. Fruits, in most cases, are mixtures of carbohydrates, fiber, and water. As you can see on the food calorie scale, almost all of them generate only 10 to 15 calories per ounce. There are a few that I'll call funny fruits that contain some fat and therefore generate more calories. Olives and avocados are still relatively low in calories per ounce, but they're higher in calories provided than are apples, oranges, and grapes. As you can see, the highest calorie fruits are nuts of all kinds, which generate on the average about 175 calories per ounce. Nuts actually contain very little carbohydrate and are mostly mixtures of protein and fat. The protein content of nuts is about 4 grams per ounce, which is about half the protein in an ounce of any kind of meat. You and I would conclude that nuts are a very high-calorie source of protein for our diet. Vegetables, as we've said previously, are mixtures of carbohydrates, fiber, and water. and they are rich sources of all kinds of important vitamins and minerals. As you can see from the calorie scale, vegetables fall into one of two calorie groupings. 5 of the vegetables are starchy and very dense sources of calories of energy. These are potatoes, yams, peas, corn, and beans like navy and lima beans. And they typically generate about 25 calories per ounce that we consume. All other vegetables generate only about 10 calories per ounce as they come to us from the garden. We can, of course, mix butter and bacon with them and markedly increase their calories. We who are attempting to manage our energy balance should try to eat a lot of these 10 calorie per ounce vegetables. The starchy vegetables are good choices as well, but they're more dense and provide more calories per ounce of the vegetables. Of course, vegetables may be dried and fried or breaded so that other types of foods like oils and grains get added to them. This typically triples the calories than any of the vegetables. Good examples of this are fried tomatoes, French fries, and potato chips. Grains are mixtures of carbohydrates, fiber, and water with tiny amounts of protein. As you can see on the calorie scale, they come to us dry from the farm, generating about 100 calories per dry ounce. We eat them dry only as breakfast cereals, and it takes quite a pile of breakfast cereal to make 1 ounce. Mostly, we eat grains that either have water to them, like oatmeal or pasta, or by adding oil to them and getting pie crust or donuts. Obviously, we who are managing our energy balance have to be very careful about how many grain items we eat regularly. Meats and eggs are mixtures of protein and fat, with almost no carbohydrates added. They contain some water and fiber also. Protein, of course, is absolutely necessary for health. But all of us to be healthy must know that we are getting enough protein in our diet to replace our mandatory nitrogen losses in our urine. A discussion of calories generated by an ounce of meat or eggs must therefore begin with the grams of protein per ounce. It turns out that all meat items, except perhaps for bacon and hot dogs, contain exactly the same number of grams of protein per ounce. The magic number in this case is 7. All flesh items, therefore, give us 7 grams of protein per ounce. And the only differences in calories per ounce come from how much fat or oil is present with the protein in the meat. As you can see in the calories per ounce scale, there are meats that are as low in calories as 30 per ounce, and there are other meats that are as high as 90 calories per ounce. The difference is the amount of oil added. I was always taught that if an animal runs fast, it will be lean and give us few calories per ounce. Animals that stand around all day, like a cow in a feedlot, are more likely to contain a larger amount of fat and give us more calories per ounce. Eggs also give us about 7 grams of protein per ounce of egg. Some of this comes from the egg white and some from the egg yolk. Many experts discuss eggs with dairy products because we find them in the same place in the grocery store. The truth is that eggs are mixtures of protein and fat like meat, and they contain almost no carbohydrate. In our next video on nutrition, we'll continue this discussion by looking at the remaining food groupings, which are dairy products, condiments, and drinks of all kinds. I'll look forward to seeing you next time to finish our discussion of these items.